10 years ago, I had it all. A beautiful wife named Stephanie, two amazing kids, Jack and Amy, and a house in suburban Chicago that felt like our own slice of paradise. I remember thinking nothing could ever tear us apart. Then came that fateful evening when I spotted strange text messages on my wife's phone. Within weeks, I was labeled an abuser, kicked out of my home, and separated from my children. What hurt most, I was completely innocent. Before I tell you how Faina became my salvation and how my ex-wife's face crumbled when she discovered our happiness, let me know where you are watching from. And hit that subscribe button if you have ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely. I met Stephanie during my final year of college at Northwestern. She was studying education, her auburn hair always catching the sunlight as she crossed the quad. Our first conversation happened in the campus coffee shop, where I accidentally spilled my latte on her textbook. Instead of getting angry, she laughed and said it was a boring read anyway. That moment, I knew she was different. Our wedding took place at Lakeside Gardens in Chicago, a perfect June day with white roses and blue hydrangeas decorating every surface. 200 guests watched as we exchanged our vows beneath an arch of fresh flowers. Stephanie wore a lace gown that made her look like she had stepped out of a fairy tale. When she said "I do," I genuinely believed we would grow old together. My career at Technova, a software engineering company, took off shortly after our wedding. After 3 years of dedicated work and countless late nights, I was promoted to lead developer. The salary increase allowed us to purchase our first home in Oak Park, a 4-bedroom colonial with a yard large enough for future children to play. Jack arrived 2 years later, a healthy 7-pound boy with my green eyes and Stephanie's smile. The moment the nurse placed him in my arms, I made a silent promise to be the father I never had. My own dad had abandoned our family when I was 12, leaving behind only painful memories and unpaid bills. I swore my son would never know that kind of pain. Amy joined our family 26 months after Jack, a tiny fighter who arrived 6 weeks premature, but quickly caught up to her milestones. She had strawberry blonde curls and a determination that showed itself even as an infant. While Jack was content to observe the world, Amy wanted to conquer it. Our life settled into a comfortable routine. Mornings meant breakfast chaos, school drop-offs, and commutes. Evenings were filled with homework, help, bath time stories, and quiet moments on the porch swing after the kids fell asleep. Weekends included soccer games, dance recitals, and family movie nights with homemade popcorn. It was exhausting but perfect. The first changes came gradually. Stephanie had grown restless teaching 3rd grade at Lincoln Elementary. When a friend mentioned an administrative assistant position at Brewster & Cole law firm, she applied on a whim and was hired. The pay was better, the hours more predictable, and she seemed energized by the professional environment. Over the next few months, subtle shifts occurred. Her wardrobe transformed from practical teacher clothes to tailored suits and designer shoes that stretched our budget. She joined a gym downtown and began highlighting her hair. These changes seemed positive, initially signs of her growing confidence. New friends entered her life, colleagues who enjoyed happy hours and weekend brunches. I was invited at first, but gradually excluded, as they discussed inside jokes and office politics I couldn't follow. Stephanie began attending team dinners that kept her out until 11 or 12 at night, sometimes returning with the scent of wine on her breath. The first real warning sign appeared 7 months after her career change. I woke at 2 in the morning to find her side of the bed empty. Downstairs, I discovered Stephanie sitting in the dark, furiously texting. When she noticed me, she quickly darkened her screen and claimed she was checking work emails. Something in her expression, a flicker of guilt, perhaps planted the first seed of doubt. James Taylor entered our story during the firm's holiday party. As Stephanie's colleague introduced us, I noticed how his hand lingered on her lower back, how she leaned slightly toward him when she laughed. He was everything I was not. Tall, athletic, with the easy confidence of old money and an Ivy League education. Throughout the evening, my wife's eyes found him across the room more often than they found me. The text messages began appearing with increasing frequency. Always work-related. Always requiring immediate attention. Stephanie started keeping her phone face down and changed her password from our anniversary date to something I did not know. When questioned, she accused me of being controlling and paranoid. The tension culminated during a dinner with my parents at our home. My mother had prepared Stephanie's favorite lasagna as a peace offering after a previous disagreement. Halfway through the meal, Stephanie's phone buzzed. After reading the message, she abruptly announced a client emergency, kissed the children goodbye, and left. My father's disappointed expression mirrored my own growing suspicions. That night, after my parents left and the children were asleep, I checked our cell phone records online. Dozens of calls and hundreds of text messages had been exchanged between my wife and a number I did not recognize. When I confronted Stephanie upon her 3 a.m. return, she dismissed my concerns as jealousy and spent the remainder of the night in the guest room. The uncertainty became unbearable. After weeks of sleepless nights and growing distance between us, I hired Martin Reeves, a private investigator recommended by a colleague. The decision felt like a betrayal, but my need for truth outweighed my guilt. Martin charged $300 per hour money, withdrawn from my personal savings, so Stephanie would not notice. 3 days later, Martin delivered what I had feared most: photographs of Stephanie and James entering the Lakeshore Hotel at lunchtime, leaving 2 hours later looking disheveled and intimate. Additional photos showed them kissing in his car, her wedding ring noticeably absent. The final image captured them sharing dinner at an expensive restaurant 40 miles away, her hand entwined with his across the table. I waited until the children were at my mother-in-law's house for their weekend sleepover before confronting Stephanie. Placing the photographs on our kitchen table, I asked simply how long her initial denial transformed into rage when she realized the extent of my investigation. She screamed about invasion of privacy, about my obsessive behavior and controlling nature. Not once did she acknowledge her betrayal. The argument escalated throughout the evening, voices rising, then falling as we moved from kitchen to living room to bedroom. Neighbors later reported hearing shouting, but nothing that indicated physical violence. Around midnight, exhausted and heartbroken, I left to drive around aimlessly, eventually checking into a roadside motel to collect my thoughts. The police arrived at 7:45 the next morning. 2 officers, one male and one female, explained that my wife had filed a domestic violence report. According to her statement, I had thrown her against a wall, slapped her repeatedly, and threatened further harm if she attempted to leave me. The female officer photographed a bruise on my forearm. Defensive evidence, they called it, though it had come from a basketball game days earlier. I was not arrested that day, but was ordered to vacate my home, pending investigation. 30 minutes to pack essentials while officers watched. Jack, just 7 years old, witnessed my departure, confusion and fear in his eyes as I promised to see him soon. Amy, only 5, clung to my leg until Stephanie physically removed her, causing my daughter to wail in protest. The temporary restraining order arrived 2 days later, prohibiting contact with Stephanie or my children. Her attorney, Patricia Whitman, a senior partner at Brewster & Cole and close friend of James, submitted affidavits claiming a long history of emotional and physical abuse. According to these documents, I had isolated Stephanie from friends, monitored her communications, and engaged in escalating violent behavior throughout our marriage. Former colleagues of Stephanie from the law firm provided statements supporting her claims. Several described witnessing her distress, mysterious bruises, and fearful behavior around me at company functions. None had actually seen any abuse occur. One paralegal claimed Stephanie had confided in her months earlier about living in fear. Conversations that never happened. The preliminary hearing occurred 3 weeks later. I had secured Michael Donovan, an attorney specializing in family law, who agreed to a payment plan when he learned of my financial constraints. Stephanie arrived, dressed conservatively, all designer clothes replaced by a simple blouse and skirt. She spoke softly, dabbing at tears, while describing years of alleged abuse that had never occurred. When my attorney presented evidence of her affair with James, the judge deemed it irrelevant to the abuse allegations. The phone records showing no history of threatening messages from me were dismissed as incomplete evidence. The lack of police reports or medical records documenting previous abuse was explained away by Stephanie's fear of retaliation. The court granted an extended protective order. I was permitted supervised visitation with my children once weekly at a family services center. Child support and temporary spousal support were set at amounts that consumed 70% of my income. The family home remained under Stephanie's exclusive use. News travels quickly in professional circles. A week after the hearing, I was called into my supervisor's office at Technova. Despite 7 years of excellent performance reviews, the company felt my personal situation created a public relations concern. They offered 6 weeks of severance pay in exchange for a voluntary resignation. The alternative was termination for creating a hostile workplace environment based on anonymous complaints they refused to detail. Friends who had shared holidays at our table now avoided my calls. Parents from Jack's soccer team and Amy's dance class crossed the street when they saw me approaching. My own sister questioned if there might be some truth to Stephanie's accusations. Only my elderly parents maintained unwavering support, though my father's heart condition worsened under the stress. Financial ruin followed swiftly. Legal fees depleted my savings. The apartment I could afford was a 1-bedroom unit in a rundown building 40 minutes from my children's school. Roaches scurried across countertops and neighbors fought loudly through paper-thin walls. I slept on a second-hand mattress while searching for employment. 3 months after losing my home, I attempted to see Jack after his soccer game, staying at a distance the restraining order permitted. When he spotted me and ran toward me, the coach intervened. As Jack screamed for me, I was threatened with arrest if I did not leave immediately. The helplessness I felt watching my son's tears as I walked away haunts me still. Depression enveloped me like a heavy fog. Days blurred together in my apartment, where water stains spread across the ceiling like disease. The refrigerator contained only condiments and expired milk. Shaving seemed pointless. Showering became an occasional event rather than daily routine. The part-time position stocking shelves at Gardner's Grocery lasted exactly 17 days before my manager terminated me for lack of enthusiasm. My lowest moment came 6 months after the separation. Standing on Michigan Avenue Bridge at 2 in the morning, I watched the Chicago River flowing silently below. The physical pain of existing had become unbearable, each breath requiring conscious effort. The water looked peaceful, promising an end to the constant ache in my chest. One step forward was all it would take. That water is filthy, you know. Probably catch 3 diseases before you even drown. The voice belonged to Frank Mercer, a bearded man in mismatched clothes, who appeared beside me on the bridge. His calloused hand gripped my arm with surprising strength, as he continued speaking in a matter-of-fact tone about river pollution and hypothermia. Without asking permission, he guided me to a 24-hour diner, where he ordered us both coffee and apple pie. Frank, I learned, had been a Marine before losing everything to PTSD and alcoholism. Now sober for 8 years, he recognized the look of a man contemplating his final exit. Between bites of pie, he wrote down an address and time. Thursday at 7. No excuses. The address led to a church basement, where 12 men gathered weekly, the reclaim group they called themselves. Men who had lost children, homes, and identities through divorce, false accusations, or legal systems that viewed them as disposable. Some stories mirrored my own, others were worse. All offered understanding without judgment. Through these connections, I found temporary construction work. The physical labor exhausted my body, enough that sleep became possible. My apartment gained second-hand furniture. Meals became regular. Therapy sessions provided by a nonprofit organization for men in crisis helped me process my grief and anger. 3 months after meeting Frank, I began volunteering at Westside Community Center, teaching basic computer skills to disadvantaged youth. The center needed someone with technical knowledge, and I needed purpose. Working with children eased the pain of separation from my own. Faina first appeared in my life as a barrier rather than a blessing. The Ukrainian-American social worker coordinated programs at the center, her steel-gray eyes assessing me with open suspicion when I arrived for my first volunteer shift. Her background check had revealed my restraining order, and she made it clear that any concerning behavior would result in immediate dismissal. These children have experienced enough trauma, she stated, arms crossed defensively. They do not need more from you. Her accent thickened. When emotional, I would later learn a remnant of her childhood in Odessa, before immigrating to Chicago at age 11. That first day, she assigned another staff member to monitor my class, watching from the doorway like a sentinel guarding precious cargo. Over weeks, Faina's frost began to thaw as she observed my interactions with the students. My patience with 13-year-old Darnell, whose anger issues mirrored my own unprocessed emotions. My encouragement of Jasmine, a brilliant girl whose confidence had been crushed by years of poverty and educational neglect. The genuine joy I found in their small victories. You are good with them, Faina remarked one evening as we cleaned keyboards after class. They trust you. Trust was a currency I had thought forever beyond my reach. Her words, simple as they were, represented the first deposit back into an account I believed permanently closed. An opportunity arrived unexpectedly through Marcus Jenkins, a center board member who owned a small software development company. After observing my teaching and hearing about my technical background, he offered a junior developer position with flexible hours that accommodated my volunteer work. The salary was half what I had earned at Technova, but represented salvation from financial collapse. 6 months into my new position at Jenkins Solutions, I was assigned to develop educational software for children with learning disabilities. The project reconnected me with my original passion for accessible technology. Late nights at the office became voluntary rather than obligatory. My enthusiasm noticed by colleagues and management alike. Meanwhile, my relationship with Faina evolved from professional courtesy to genuine friendship. Our conversations extended beyond center business to personal history's favorite books and shared disdain for Chicago deep dish pizza that she insisted is not pizza at all, just casserole pretending. I learned about her family's struggle as immigrants, her father working 3 jobs while her mother cleaned hotel rooms. How education represented their American dream fulfilled when Faina graduated with her social work degree. How her ex-fiancé had betrayed her with her maid of honor 2 weeks before their wedding, a pain she thought would never heal. We are both survivors of heart thieves, she said one evening, as we walked from the center to the train station. The simple acknowledgement of shared experience created a bridge between us that neither had anticipated crossing. My legal situation remained unchanged, despite a new attorney and multiple court appearances. Stephanie, now officially dating James Taylor, maintained her accusations with unwavering commitment. My supervised visitations with Jack and Amy became increasingly strained as they absorbed their mother's narrative about their dangerous father. Jack, now 8, asked during one visit if I had really tried to hurt Mommy. Amy, 6, and formerly my shadow, refused to sit beside me, her eyes constantly seeking the supervisor's reassurance. Each visit ended with physical pain in my chest, as though my heart were literally breaking beneath my ribs. The court-mandated psychological evaluation yielded results, supporting my character, describing me as demonstrating no indicators of violent tendencies or abusive personality traits. Stephanie's attorney successfully argued these findings were inconclusive and potentially manipulated through my intelligent presentation and calculation. Throughout this period, Faina became my unexpected anchor. When court decisions crushed my hopes, she appeared at my apartment with homemade borscht and practical encouragement. When supervised visits left me emotionally drained, her phone calls provided perspective and patience. She attended my therapy sessions when invited, not as a romantic partner, but as a friend committed to my recovery. Our first actual date occurred almost accidentally after a community fundraiser where we had both volunteered. Too tired to cook, but too wired to sleep. We found ourselves at a 24-hour Ukrainian diner, sharing plates of pierogi, while debating the merits of various science fiction authors. The evening ended with a chaste hug and mutual agreement to try an intentional date the following weekend. We moved cautiously into romance, both carrying baggage that demanded careful unpacking. Physical intimacy developed gradually, emotional trust, even more slowly. Neither rushed nor pressured the other, understanding that healing happened in its own time. My professional life flourished unexpectedly. The educational software I developed initially, intended for a small client base, gained attention after a special education teacher in Boston shared remarkable results on an educational blog. Orders increased along with my value to the company. A raise and promotion followed, allowing me to move to a safer apartment in a neighborhood with trees and functioning streetlights. News from my former life arrived through mutual acquaintances. Stephanie and James had moved in together. My old house was on the market. Jack had been asking questions about me, expressing doubt about his mother's version of events. A small thread of hope worth clinging to. A year and a half after joining Jenkins Solutions, I was interviewed by Tech Educate magazine about our software's impact on learning accessibility. The article included my personal journey from corporate developer to educational technology champion. I shared carefully edited aspects of my story, focusing on resilience rather than victimhood. The piece, titled Coding Compassion, included a professional photograph of me demonstrating the software to children at the community center. Stephanie discovered the magazine article through a Google alert set for James's law firm, which had been mentioned regarding a charity donation. Seeing my name and new success reopened what she had considered a closed chapter. According to mutual friends, her relationship with James had deteriorated after his promotion required frequent travel. The excitement of forbidden romance had faded into mundane reality. The law firm had discreetly asked for her resignation 3 months earlier. Uncomfortable with the office relationship once James became partner. At 34, she found herself unemployed, her reputation in legal circles tarnished, and her relationship unstable. The article revealing my professional resurrection and apparent happiness struck like a personal affront. James ended their relationship shortly after reconnecting with a former college girlfriend whose family connections better served his ambitions. The narrative Stephanie had constructed, the abusive husband versus her sophisticated savior, collapsed entirely. On a Tuesday afternoon, she appeared unannounced at my office wearing the confident smile I once loved. Through the glass partition, I watched her charm the receptionist, her body language suggesting casual acquaintance rather than estranged spouse. When she entered my office, her practiced vulnerability emerged. "Edmund, you look well," she began, eyes assessing my improved appearance and new environment. "I have been doing a lot of thinking about us, about what happened." The conversation that followed was expertly choreographed. Stephanie expressed regret about misunderstandings and poor communication. She suggested that perhaps we had both contributed to the marriage's breakdown. Never did she acknowledge the false accusations or the affair. Instead, she focused on our children, how they missed having their family intact. "Jack asks about you constantly. Amy keeps your picture beside her bed," she claimed, though my most recent supervised visit had shown no such attachment. "For their sake, maybe we could consider reconciliation." When I did not immediately embrace her suggestion, her approach shifted. Subtle reminders about her continued legal advantage regarding custody. Implications that any new relationship might complicate my visitation rights further. Tears that appeared and vanished with theatrical precision. "I still care about you, Edmund. We share history and children. This James thing was a mistake. We belonged together from the beginning." Before I could respond, Faina knocked and entered with lunch we had planned to share. Her expression registered immediate recognition. Not of Stephanie specifically, but of the situation unfolding. 7 years, working with crisis intervention, had taught her to identify manipulation when she witnessed it. Stephanie's focus shifted instantly, her assessment of Faina calculating and dismissive. The Ukrainian social worker, with her practical clothing and direct manner, represented everything Stephanie had rejected in her own transformation. The handmade soup container Faina carried symbolized domestic care Stephanie had never prioritized. "You must be Edmund's secretary," Stephanie suggested with deliberate misinterpretation. "Could you give us privacy? Family matters." Faina placed the lunch on my desk without responding to the insult. "I will wait outside when you need me," she stated simply, the words directed at me while her eyes held Stephanie's gaze without wavering. The interruption destabilized Stephanie's performance. When the door closed, her pleasant facade cracked. "Really, Edmund? That is who you replace me with? Does she know you have anger issues?" "There were never any anger issues, Stephanie. As you well know." The confrontation escalated rapidly. Stephanie's disappointment at my resistance transformed into familiar accusations. When I mentioned the evidence of her affair, she claimed I had driven her to seek comfort elsewhere. When I referenced the false abuse allegations, she insisted her fear had been genuine, if perhaps exaggerated. As her frustration peaked, Stephanie made a critical error. "If you think that woman will help you get my children, you are delusional. One call to my attorney about your new girlfriend, and your supervised visits will become video calls only. My children, not our children. You need to leave," I stated, standing to open my office door. "Any communication about Jack and Amy should go through our attorneys." Stephanie's composure dissolved completely. In the reception area, she spotted Faina waiting calmly on a bench. Something about Faina's quiet confidence triggered Stephanie's final outburst. She advanced toward Faina, voice raised about home-wrecking and taking advantage of vulnerable men. When Faina stood her ground without engagement, Stephanie attempted to slap her. Faina, with reflexes honed through years of intervention work, caught Stephanie's wrist mid-swing. The entire incident was captured by the office security cameras, including Stephanie's threats and attempted assault. The security footage became the cornerstone of my renewed custody petition. My new attorney, Elena Vasquez, specialized in cases involving parental alienation and false allegations. With the video evidence and testimony from my therapist, employer, and colleagues, we built a case challenging the original protective order. Further investigation revealed messages between Stephanie and James, dating back months before their supposed beginning, discussing strategies to end our marriage advantageously. A paralegal formerly employed at Brewster & Cole provided an affidavit confirming Stephanie had fabricated evidence, including self-inflicted bruises, photographed for court submissions. The judge assigned to the new hearing reviewed evidence that had previously been suppressed or unavailable. The psychological evaluation gained new credibility when contrasted with Stephanie's documented public behavior. Character witnesses from the community center, including program participants and parents, testified to my consistent, gentle nature with vulnerable children. After 4 years of separation, I was granted joint custody of Jack and Amy. The court acknowledged the parental alienation that had occurred and ordered family therapy to rebuild our relationship. The protective order was dismissed entirely, my name cleared of the false allegations that had nearly destroyed me. Meeting Jack, now 11, outside of the supervised environment felt miraculous. His initial hesitation dissolved when I produced the baseball cards we had collected together years earlier, preserved carefully through each apartment move. Our conversation began awkwardly, but gradually found its rhythm through shared memories, and his interest in my work designing educational games. Amy, at 9, proved more challenging. Years of maternal programming had convinced her of my dangerousness. She maintained physical distance during our first several visits, speaking minimally and refusing physical contact. Faina, with her professional background, suggested patience rather than pressure. Trust rebuilds like a bridge, she advised, one plank at a time, testing each step before adding the next. During our 5th unsupervised visit, Amy witnessed Jack and me laughing over a particularly disastrous attempt at making pancakes. Curiosity overcame caution as she edged closer to inspect the misshapen results. When I offered her the spatula to try improving upon our failure, a ghost of her former smile appeared. By the visit's end, she had allowed a brief side-hug goodbye. James Taylor attended the final custody hearing, surprising everyone by testifying about his role in the fabricated allegations. Facing an ethics investigation that threatened his legal career, he admitted to encouraging Stephanie's exaggerations to expedite divorce proceedings that would allow their relationship to continue publicly. His testimony, while self-serving, corroborated the evidence of deliberate deception. Several former colleagues approached me after the court decision became public, offering apologies for believing false narratives without question. Technova's HR director suggested I apply for an upcoming senior position, citing regret over my forced departure. I declined politely, having found greater fulfillment in my current work, developing accessible technology for underserved communities. Stephanie, facing perjury charges that were ultimately reduced through a plea agreement, began mandatory counseling. Her initial resentment gradually yielded to grudging cooperation regarding our children's schedules. While genuine remorse seemed beyond her emotional capacity, practical acceptance of our new arrangement emerged through necessity. 5 years after that fateful night, when I discovered text messages that unraveled my former life, Faina and I exchanged vows in a small ceremony at Lakeside Botanical Gardens. Jack, now 12, served as my best man, his speech, bringing tears to every guest. Amy, 10, and finally comfortable in my presence, scattered rose petals alongside Faina's niece with exuberant enthusiasm. Our honeymoon was a simple week at a Michigan lake house, the children joining us for the final weekend to create new family traditions. Under Faina's influence, I had learned that family could be reconstructed, not just recovered. Her practical wisdom and unwavering integrity healed parts of me I had believed permanently broken. Stephanie attended Jack's middle school graduation the following spring. Though our interaction remained minimal, the venomous hostility had dissipated. She had found employment at a real estate office and appeared to be building a life independent of the bitterness that had consumed her. For the children's sake, I considered this progress worth acknowledging. The educational software company I founded with Marcus Jenkins expanded beyond our initial projections. Accessible Futures now employed 15 developers, creating programs for children with diverse learning needs. Profits funded scholarships for students at the community center, where my journey toward healing had begun. Frank Mercer, now sober for 13 years, managed our internship program for recovering adults seeking second chances. Jack and Amy split their time between households according to the court arrangement, though. As they entered adolescence, their preferences gained consideration. Both maintained bedrooms in our home, their personalities reflected in the decor they selected. Family dinners on custody nights became sacred time electronics, banned in favor of genuine conversation about triumphs and challenges. The scars remain. Certain triggers, legal documents, unexpected confrontations, particular anniversary dates, can temporarily transport me back to those darkest moments on the bridge. Therapy continues intermittently when needed. Faina recognizes the signs of emotional flashbacks and provides space without abandonment, a balance I never experienced in my previous marriage. What saved me wasn't revenge or vindication, though justice eventually arrived. Salvation came through grace, discovered in unexpected places, a homeless veteran's intervention, children's trust at the community center colleagues, who valued contribution over reputation, and a woman whose strength matched my broken pieces perfectly. If I could share wisdom with others facing similar devastation, it would be this: survival happens one breath at a time, until breathing no longer requires conscious effort. Rebuilding begins with accepting help, especially when pride demands isolation. Justice may arrive slowly, but internal peace need not wait for external validation. The most profound lesson: sometimes life's deepest wounds create necessary openings for greater love to enter. Had Stephanie remained faithful, had the false accusations never occurred, I would never have discovered my true purpose or found Faina's extraordinary heart. Have you ever experienced betrayal that ultimately led to something better? Share your story in the comments below. If this journey resonated with you, please hit subscribe and the notification bell to join our community of survivors becoming thrivers. Remember, your worst chapter may simply be the necessary prelude to your life's most beautiful story. Thank you for listening, and may your own path lead to unexpected blessings beyond your current sight.